Hello, how you doing? Welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Mariana, but you can call me Mari. And today, well, we're going to be talking about Twilight. So it turns out I've been wanting to do this video for the longest time, and because of lack of time or just like lack of inspiration, I just haven't sat down and actually done it. And so this is what we're doing today. I'm going to be researching articles and looking at some academic perspectives of the book Twilight and doing my own academic review based on those academic discussions that have been going on throughout the years, because this book was published in the 2000s and now we are in 2022, and so a long time has passed and a lot of perspectives have been brought forth, a lot of negative insight into the book. So I'm not here to criticize Twilight. I actually really enjoyed reading this book when I read it back in June or July. When I read it back in July, again, after not reading it since it came out. And I had a beautiful reading experience, honestly, if you ask me. I really enjoyed going back and tabbing it and having a discussion with myself and with the characters and looking at the nuances that can be found in this book, because yes, it's not as bad as I think I thought it was, and it does have problematic things, which I will be mentioning of course here, which are like the focus on the academic articles. Most of them are focusing around themes that are found in this book and that are critically analyzed. That's why I'm doing this video, because I haven't seen a lot of like academic discourse surrounding Twilight, and since I am very much interested in critical reviews and just like literature in general, this is me just giving my own insight at the very end, but also putting forth all of these articles in case you want to read them or just hearing me talk about them. And that's my explanation as to why I decided to make this video. I didn't need to explain myself, but just wanted to clear that up. I'm not here to criticize Twilight. I actually really enjoyed it, but I am here to critically analyze it. So yeah, I hope you enjoy, and let's get on with the different articles that I'm going to be researching. Okay, so as we guessed, there's a lot here to unpack because there are a lot of different themes, and most of them are negative in terms of eating disorders in Twilight, violence, just in general, romance being idealized through the lens of the male gaze, the implicatures of just characters being portrayed the way they are. I'm trying to pick different essays for different themes, and so far we have like 6. And the 6 that I've picked are Twilight, It's Not Good for Maidens, which talks about gender, sexuality, and family. In Stephenie Meyer's Twilight series, I think this may go into the Mormon rhetoric that Twilight contains. If you didn't know, the author is a Mormon, and she includes a lot of very preachy but very subtle implications in her novel, in Twilight. Then also Beauty and the Beautiful Beast, which I thought was an excellent title for this essay. It's a quest for a transgressive female desire. That sounds interesting. I think that could be a good essay to read. And then Twilight of Feminism. The Twilight of Feminism. Very good. Stephenie Meyer's saga and the contradictions of contemporary girlhood. Alright. Then Good Vampires Don't Eat. Eating Disorder Logic in Stephenie Meyer's Twilight series. I Could Kill You Quite Easily, Bella, simply by accident. Violence and Romance in Stephenie Meyer's Twilight saga. I'm laughing. I know these are not light topics. I'm not laughing at the content. I'm just laughing at the fact that, yeah, all of these essays, as I said, are mostly negative because we're dealing with very just hard topics, but I'm glad that they are being written. Keep in mind that all of these were written between 2011 and 2013. I found one written in 2018, but it seems that Twilight just hasn't been as talked about in the academic circles as of late, which makes sense because this book was written, again, was published, I think in 2008, if I'm not mistaken, so that's why. And then the last essay I picked is Breaking Faith, Disrupted Expectations and Ownership in Stephenie Meyer's Twilight Saga. So we have eating disorders, we have gender discussions, what else? We have Beauty and the Beast, feminism and the contradictions of girlhood, we have violence and romance, and expectations of ownership. So yeah, those are the 6 essays that I'm going to be researching on and kind of getting some sense of what the author is talking about. Just by reading the titles alone, we can already tell what the discussion is going to be about. So, well, let's just go into it. Let's begin with the first essay and see what it says, and then I'll come back to you and talk to you a little bit about it. Hi, so it's the next day and I've been doing the research and looking at the different essays. And the first essay that talks about Beauty and the Beast and how this is pretty much a retelling of Beauty and the Beast but in a different way. It talks about how Bella is kind of this stereotypical damsel in distress character and the typical girl that needs saving. But it does argue that because of the fact that Edward is kind of like a monster or a monstrous personification of a vampire, in this case an animal, we get a different type of sexuality and a different type of sex desire. Here it says that Bella is seeking a frank ownership of desire and sexual agency that is conventionally reserved for men and which, when present in women, is regarded with suspicion. So Bella, throughout the novel, wants to be with Edward in many different ways, and Edward is the one that doesn't want to be with her and restrains himself, and the only reason why he does that is not because of her attributes or because of her cultivated talents or qualities. Like, it's not a chastity out of respect, but rather out of like animalistic desires that he cannot control, that if he were to lay with her, he would kill her. And so it's, you know, it's a little bit not so romantic in that sense, and it does go a little bit, well, the author here argues that it goes against the stereotypical idea of chastity as like a respectful thing and anti-feminist, but rather it kind of looks at it as a bestiality issue and adds a layer of sexuality that wasn't there before. Kind of like a little bit of like a furry thing. Yeah. So it says here too that because of the fact that Edward is not human but is presented as a human, we get a duality of his character and a duality of this sexuality in the novel. And how if he was just a human, it would be very simple and very straightforward, but because of the fact that he's an animal, the stereotype of the romantic hero is kind of weird, because she is a damsel in distress, she needs to be rescued by a hero, she's also physically vulnerable, all the time being described as not like other girls and clumsy and all of that, and her attractiveness for the hero is something beyond her control. Like, he is so good looking that it's beyond her own control to actually want him. And so the idea that she is attracted to him, it also goes beyond her own desires. And it's not only hers, but his as well, in a different way. Like, they're both attracted to each other, but in different ways. And that's what this essay talks about. How because of the fact that this is weirdly a Beauty and the Beast retelling, it has a different sexual agency when it comes to Bella. I don't know if I completely agree with some of the things that she mentions here. There's a point where she mentions again like chastity as equal to respect, but then she also mentions that because of feminism, that idea has been kind of left behind and understood as an issue of choice, like whether somebody wants to be with somebody or not. And here the choice is almost removed because again it goes further from anything that Bella has ever experienced. Like, she's very attracted to him, but it goes beyond just him being a normal, regular, good-looking guy. It's more of a magnetic attraction. And so it kind of removes a little bit of her own capabilities of choosing him, if that makes sense. So that's it for this essay. Now let's move on to gender and sexuality and family in Twilight. In this second essay, we have something very interesting because the author doesn't necessarily focus on one specific thing. They go from one to another theme, and the ones that called my attention the most are the ones that talk about how, well, family structure here in Twilight is super important. At the beginning of the novel, Bella is clearly struggling with the idea of going back to living with her father after the divorce and after having lived with her mom for so long. And we also get this weird dynamic between her and Charlie as they start to kind of bond again and find each other again. And another thing that the author mentions is that because of this, because of the fact that Bella comes from like a broken home or an unstable family, all she wants is a stable family. All she wants is to marry Edward and be with him forever and have this stable family, which she then obtains. Spoiler alert, if you don't want to be spoiled and you've never read Twilight, you don't want to be spoiled about pretty much everything that happens. Bella ends up getting pregnant and fulfilling the role of having a family. It's like a vampire eternal family. And that's one aspect that the author mentions that I found pretty interesting because yes, it's true. It's reflected upon how the dynamic goes between Bella and Edward. They've only known each other for like kind of like even a couple of months, maybe like 3 months, and she already wants to marry him. And it may be because of the fact that she comes from an unstable family. She wants a family of her own. But another thing to mention is the fact that when Bella transitions, and this goes beyond Twilight, this goes towards, again, spoilers. If you've never read any of the books or watched any of the movies, maybe this video is not for you, but when Bella becomes a vampire, the first thing when she meets her father, she describes his smell as very attractive, and it's a bizarre, weird moment. But the author of this essay says or argues that this is a critical point on which we see Bella's need for family being reflected in this patriarchal structure that the novel maintains, because of the fact that we see why Edward is so attractive to Bella beyond just him being like an attractive person, but rather because he represents a fatherly figure. And a lot of the things that Edward does throughout the novel are very patriarchal and very much like fatherly, protective, overbearing. And the fact that Bella is like almost attracted to her father's blood is an indication of, well, the author argues that it's an indication of her being attracted to fatherly and patriarchal structures, and why she is attracted to Edward. I thought that was pretty interesting. Well, moving on. That's this essay. It explores more than just Twilight, more than just this book in particular. It focuses a lot on the fourth book. That's why I'm not going to go in much more detail about it. But again, I will leave every single essay in the description below. My Google Sheets that I worked on for this video and you can look at it there. You can see some of the quotes that I selected for this video, and the names of the authors of the essays and the essays themselves are all there in case you want to check them out. But let's move on to the next essay, which is I Could Kill You Quite Easily, Bella, and the violence in Twilight. I'm going to skip the one about feminism because I think we've talked a little bit about it, and we all know that this is not the most feminist book ever. I don't think I need to, you know, bash you over the head with the themes of that perspective. And I also am going to skip the one about eating disorders because it can be a little bit triggering, and I don't want to go into that discussion. We all know that vampires don't eat and all of that, so I'm not going to put myself through that and read something like that because it can be a little bit triggering. But I'm going to move on to the next essay, which talks about violence. The essay about violence was incomplete, so I couldn't fully read it, but it talked mostly just about how present the violence is in Twilight, and the unfortunate account and the unfortunate set of events that occur to Bella once she meets Edward, how dangerous her life becomes, and how predictable the fact that she's not going to care about all those things because she is in love with Edward, and how that is super negative in terms of how we as women see ourselves within society. If we're only looking for love and want to sacrifice everything because of the men we love, then we are playing into the dynamic of patriarchal society and we're not respecting ourselves. And Bella, in this case, puts her life at risk just because of the fact that she loves this man who she met literally 2 weeks ago. And the attraction is, again, as I talked before, the attraction goes beyond just her. It's like a bodily thing that she's physically attracted to him. But even then, I'm still very much an Alice and Bella shipper. Nobody can tell me otherwise. I would have liked to read an article about the queerness in Twilight and the queer undertones that I'm sure Stephanie Meyer never intended to write, but are there in case you yeah, it's not obvious, but you can find it if you look for it, and that's what I did. Throughout the book, I just kept on looking at Bella and Alice's interactions and just marking it as like gay. So that was great. But yeah, that was that essay. I couldn't read anything further because it was blocked, and I don't have time to ask the author to send it to me, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. Alright, and lastly, that last essay was just pretty much all about the ownership that fans feel over Twilight and how they dismiss some of the most problematic aspects in order to kind of enjoy it and like it as well, which is something I've done as well, and something I discussed a little bit at the beginning. Like, you can enjoy this book without it being such an awful thing, and I think it's valid to criticize it and see it as something negative and see it as violent and see it as having like a lot of problematic issues that need to be discussed and that need to be analyzed. And that's why I wanted to include some of the essays that I talked about here, because I think an academic perspective on Twilight could be beneficial in terms of critically analyzing this novel. But if we're just talking about enjoyment, I think we can all just enjoy the things that we like and understand that they're not the best things in the world. And also, in terms of setting an example for young girls, I don't think this is the best book to read. And I'm going to stand by the fact that it's much more enjoyable to read it as an adult that understands the world and that understands how patriarchal, or that understands how awful it is to be controlled in this way and to be stalked like Edward does to Bella. But though I understand those things, I also understand the appeal of Twilight, and I understand why it holds such importance in our just modern culture. This is going to be regarded as like a teenage classic, and it has found a resurgence in the last couple of years. I would say even this year, in the last couple of months, people are beginning to talk about Twilight again, and to understand that it's not that you can enjoy something without having to constantly criticize it, if that makes sense. But again, I do find that the essays that discuss violence and that discuss like the issues of loving something without having any rational thought behind it can be wrong, and that's why it may be important for us to look at this and regard it from a different perspective, and having a lens on a critical lens on how we read. But that's what I think. I really enjoyed reading this book again after not having read it in so long. I annotated the shit out of it, and I just highly enjoyed it, even its horrible problematic things. Bella being not like other girls every single page, and Edward being just a creepy dude. He's just creepy, but I wouldn't want someone like Edward, and I still like this book. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found something interesting that you may want to further research on. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe and all those things. And most importantly, drink some water, stay hydrated, take care of yourselves, and I will see you in another video. Bye bye.